Alright, hi, I'm Ellie, and I did the Greenland shark for my presentation. Um, and these guys are one of the longest living vertebrates in the ocean, and judging from these pictures, I can definitely tell that they're a little rough around the edges. In one of the pictures, he's missing some of his tail, and they have scars and just look kind of beat up and a little ghostly, and they definitely do look ancient for how long they live. So their taxonomy. They are part of the Animalia kingdom and Chordata phylum. And since they are sharks, they are part of the Chondrichthyes class. So they're going to have mineralized cartilage. And they are part of the Squaliformes order, and that includes the dogfish sharks. So they're not going to have an anal tail. And for family and genus, they are part of the Samosidae and Samosas genus and family, which includes the sleeper sharks. And these guys I thought were really interesting. They contain antifreeze in them, and that allows them to be in the cold temperatures. These guys are also really closely related to the Greenland shark, and so they're both going to be in these deep cold waters, but I just thought that was interesting. And then the Greenland shark is part of the Samostis microcephalus species, and they're going to have the high longevity. So these guys can get up to 156 to 392 years old, give or take about 120 years, is what most scientists are saying. And that just blows my mind that they can live to such a high age like that. And I guess we'll see why in this presentation. So their range consists of mostly North Atlantic to Arctic regions. So they get up into northern Canada and Greenland, hence their name. But they can also get up to northern Europe, into Norway, and even over into the northern Russian coastal regions. So they have a wide range of where they can go. It could potentially be globally as well. It just depends on the deep water temperatures. They don't really like to go anything above 5 degrees Celsius. They like to stick in to like the negative degrees Celsius, and anything below 5 degrees Celsius, which is 41 degrees Fahrenheit. So the Greenland sharks have been seen at the surface and at confirmed depths of around 2,000 meters to 3,000 meters, which is roughly 6,000 to 10,000 feet. So they very much enjoy the deep, deep sea and cold, cold waters, as we'll see. So some evolutionary history. Looking at the Siberian Arctic, the first sighting of the Greenland shark over there was in the Laptev Sea, and they caught a young male in 2014. They determined that he was young because of the size of his claspers, but he was around 260 centimeters long, which is roughly 8 feet. And unfortunately, he was caught by trawling at a very deep depth of 240 meters. Not as deep as we saw on the last slide, but pretty deep for a young male Greenland shark to be swimming around. And then looking more evolutionarily into a couple million years ago, we see the split between Greenland and sleeper sharks. So as I mentioned before, Greenland and sleeper sharks are very closely related, but in this paper by Walter et al., they saw a split between the two species using mitochondrial sequence DNA, and they were able to estimate when the split occurred. And after their estimations and calculations, they predicted this split to be around 2.34 million years ago. So looking at this in like the Cenozoic era, this would be during the Quaternary period, when the planet's cooling, and looking more specifically, it would be in the Pleistocene epoch. So I added a chart for you guys to reference just about when they were. All right. So the Greenland sharks have a very high longevity, and scientists discovered their age based on radiocarbon dating. So Nielsen et al. Used the nuclei of the islands in a Greenland shark and found crystalline protein that he did radiocarbon dating techniques on. And actually, all vertebrates have this crystalline protein in their eyes. It's formed during prenatal development. But this was a way for him to estimate when or how old the Greenland sharks are based on this radiocarbon dating. So key factors to their longevity. We have case selection, so they're chondrichthyes and they're going to live in these deep waters. The case selection is going to be more pronounced for them. They're going to have a very slow growth rate. In a paper, they stated that the annual growth rate was about 1.5 centimeters a year, which is very slow and makes sense compared to their age of when they mature, which takes me to my next point. They're going to have late maturity. So Greenland sharks that are greater than 400 centimeters are gonna mature then. And so looking at this like age-wise, it would be about 156 years is when they are gonna mature fully. And then another key factor is metabolic rates. They're gonna have very slow metabolic rates. These sharks are huge. They're a really big fish. So with this large mass and at the cold temperatures that they're at, they're going to have a very slow metabolic rate. They're not going to want to spend a lot of energy trying to catch big animals for prey. They're going to scavenge or they're going to eat smaller fish. Occasionally they do surface and do like a guerrilla sneak attack on like seals, for instance. But they're mostly going to scavenge because they're super slow. Their swim speed is about 0.74 meters a second. And so that's super slow. They're not going to even be able to catch, you know, a really quick big fish or something like that. So yeah, but I also wanted to add reproduction in with their longevity because I thought it was important to add. They are aplacental viviparous sharks, and they have about 10 pups per pregnancy and a birth size of about 40 to 100 centimeters. But I think reproduction is important for their longevity because they're going to want to pass on their genes of this high longevity. And so adding in reproduction, how they reproduce, they are going to be spending a lot of energy on reproduction. And so I think it's important to add that the conservation of these animals is critical because they're not producing as many sharks per pregnancy as most, like some other sharks. But yeah, that would be the end. The next slide is my references. And thank you for a fun quarter.